Welcome back to Jim's Jeeps. Today we're going to be taking this 4.2 liter 258 with the new clutch pack installed on it and mating it to the transmission and the rest of the drivetrain. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, a couple things before we reassemble this here. First off, there is a backing plate or a inspection cover plate that slides between the engine and the flywheel. We're going to be installing that in a minute. Another important thing are these little dowel pins, and they go in the bottom holes such that the bell housing or clutch cover housing and the engine block are clocked properly. They're critically important. If you've rebuilt your engine and at the machine shop or however during disassembly you've missed those, you definitely need to find them and put them back in. That's a critical thing to have. It really sets the lateral movement in the sense that it won't try and torque itself out of alignment. And so that's what those are for. They're readily available. The part number, which I'll list in the description below, is J400-5148, and I think the -004 is because I ordered 4. They're out there. Look them up. I think they're like $2 a piece or something. Actually, the shipping will probably be more. Another thing I'll point out right now are the bolts that you can also get. These are actually made by Hillman, also posted in the link below. But they're the proper flange style bolt. This one's 3/8/16, 1 3/4 length, grade 8, of course. And these are finished with a black metal oxide finish. They're real nice. And then the larger ones are the 7/16 14 by 3 inches long, also grade 8 flange bolt. Also made by Hillman. Descriptions posted below. So the kit I'm actually installing, requires you to pull out, and I think any kit would require you to do this, pull out the old pin, roll pin that was holding the slave clutch in there. If you have the time and the inclination, I would suggest getting rid of the slave clutch. I'm not going to do that in this case. But that little pin just pulls right out. And I have a new one that came with the kit. It's right here. So we'll install that now. You just kind of tap it in. There's really not much to it. To install the internal slave cylinder, of course, we have the 2 lines, hydraulic lines, coming in and out of the cylinder. The top one is the bleed, so you can get air out of the system, and the other one is actually the fluid line that will throw out the clutch when you press the clutch pedal. There's a tab at the bottom that goes onto that pin that I showed you earlier. I drove the new pin in the housing here. There's not really much to see except for the pin that's installed in the back. And pretty much what you want to do is get this line cover off. There are 2 half-inch bolts. And then carefully fish the lines through and put that tab onto the post that you installed at the bottom, and it should look something like that. Then you reinstall this little cover. And you want those lines in that order. You always want the bleed line at the top because you want the air to be able to come up and out of the line. And so that's what that's all about. So I'll run these back in and I'll be right back with you. So now when we put the transmission back in the Jeep, we have the fluid line, which is this, almost looks like a brake line. It is very much like a brake line. And then the bleed screw on the top. The next thing to install is this very small, some kind of a keeper. Basically, this pushes over the end on the here's the old keeper. This basically goes over top of that little mushroom top there, and will hold the slave cylinder in place. And the easiest way to put that in is with a pair of needle nose pliers, and you can push it right over the top of the pin. Okay, once that step is done, we're ready to take the engine and the transmission and place them back together. I have this set up on a transmission jack, which is going to have to come up a little bit. But you can see we have the new dowel pins installed. We have the backing plate up against the engine side there. All the screw holes are clear, and we are ready to mate the two together. Alright guys, even on the transmission jack, I fought with it for a little bit. The input shaft of the transmission obviously has to be in perfect alignment with the pilot bearing hole, and the actual clutch plate, the clutch disc itself has the splines in it. You got to get the splines lined up. So I did all that. That's pretty much the only thing I did off camera. I got it placed in there. I've got these bolts positioned in there loosely, and now we're going to torque them down. So the 3/8 bolts go to 27 foot-pounds, and I think you might actually already be there on this one. Yep. And we'll check the other side. Maybe I did run them in enough. Alright, so there we are for those. That's 43 foot-pounds. And the smaller bolts up top, the top of the engine, the two at the top go to 27 foot-pounds. So, be about right there. Alright, that one's good. Alright, and those are good. So there we go. We've got the transmission and the rest of the drive line installed, at least down to the transfer case here. So now we have this 258 up front. We've got the luxurious Peugeot BA10 in the middle. And yes, that will eventually be upgraded to an AX15. And the 231 transfer case on the back end. Alright guys, let me give you an update on where we're at. We have the bell housing all torqued down with the proper bolts. These are grade 8 black metal oxide coated bolts. The 3/8 go to 27 foot-pounds. The 7/16 here on the bottom go to 43 foot-pounds. Don't forget the alignment collar that goes in the lower pockets. That's a very important step. Also, don't forget your cover, which if your dowel pins are still in the block, you may have to pull the dowel pins out. A neat trick to do that is just run a tap or a larger bolt without too much interference into the outside of the dowel pin, and then you can pull it out with a puller, a pair of vice grips, and a hammer. It's a spring fit. It's very much like a roll pin. They fit in there, and they just kind of sit there, and they keep the bell housing and the engine from torquing against one another. So it holds the alignment, and then of course the clamping force is held by the bolt itself right here. So look out for that. We have our slave cylinder piping right here through the little access port, and we put those screws back in. They don't get torqued down to any specific value. This is more just a holder kind of thing. Interesting side note, they were planning for the 4.0 even as late as 1989. This is the hole right here for the crank sensor, and it's all threaded out in there and everything like that. So that's interesting. I'm not sure if that actually was on the 2.5 as well, or if that was maybe used for the 2.5. I'm not sure. But this is the BA10 transmission, which is a Peugeot BA10 5-speed. It's okay for street use. This is original to the vehicle. I haven't swapped it out yet. I am going to do that. I'll probably do an AX15 swap with the external slave cylinder before too long. I have all those parts. I have the bell housing, I have the transmission, and I have the 23 spline transfer case as well to go with it. But this one's not dead quite yet, so I'll just use this one for a little while longer. I want to get the engine back in my YJ. It's been sitting all winter, and yeah, so it's time to get back going. We're almost halfway through summer already, so I have the engine mounts installed, torqued down. Those are new engine mounts. The rubber bushings there inside the actual arm of the engine mounts, torqued down on the block. Same for the other side. So in the next video, what we'll be doing is taking this entire drive line and putting it back in the Jeep. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. It's a shorter video today, but I wanted to get something out and keep you updated on the progress as we're going along. Thanks for joining Jim's Jeeps today. We'll see you on the next video.